Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and this is my coverage of the CSM 19 season. Obviously, I'm not doing like a full CSM, all the interviews of every single candidate this year. They've shortened the amount of time that we get for campaign seasons, and there's a lot of candidates, but there are, in fact, a few people that I wanted to highlight and kind of bring to you guys and talk to them about what they're up to. And one of them is this fella over here, Frozen Fallout. How you doing, man?
Great and good morning, New Eden. I am really glad to be here. I'm Frozen Fallout. I'm running for CSM, and I've been all around Eve. I've done a lot of crazy stuff in this game, and I'm really excited to be here. And I love all the lore stuff that you kind of throw out there, all the intricacies of Eve that it is really easy to overlook if you're just trying to shoot people in the face all day long. So I really appreciate what you do, man.
Well, flattery will get you everywhere. But I do want to say, before we get too deep into this, obviously, I do know you. We've both fought for the Galente Federation. I've been on your show a few times. However, full disclosure, I actually haven't watched your show very recently. Not anything against your show. It's actually a very good show. I've just been a little bit away from a lot of other Eve media in general, I guess, in the last several months. So I haven't been caught up with like how you feel about the recent events or anything like that. So I'd be interested to dig into that. But we do know each other, and you are a strong proponent of the Galente Federation. How's that
Absolutely.
going? How's that going?
It's going great. I mean, the battles on the front lines, in Hades all the time. There's battles up in Nenemelia that are happening all the time. The Garista three-way is getting a little bit more apparent. They stopped by like maybe once or twice in the south, a long time ago, and really, having it being off on the fringes and mostly up north has made it so that I haven't interacted with it too much. But just recently, we had them come to Hades. They had their
Yeah.
their fob in Hades. They won, and they trounced us. I was actually talking a little bit of shit just before that happened, and I was like, last time they came down here, we just beat the shit out of them. Like, let them come, and we definitely did not was not able to push them back. But we did have a lot of really good fights, a lot of really good fun. And Galente is well known for our bloodthirst over our plex thirst.
That's
So
true.
it's not surprising sometimes when we lose space or we can't win the plexing match against a million farmers. Um, and the thing is that the style of the insurgency is definitely different. The idea of having like an organized 10-person gang just going around running these ice mining missions or whatever that they, kind of run around and do is quite impressive actually.
So that's actually a really good question. Like Uprising was largely considered by a lot of players, especially faction warfare players, being an incredibly successful expansion. It really, like, I think that Uprising did a lot to kind of turn people around on their feelings about CCP as a company and their ability to produce content and all that stuff. And then Havoc happened, and people are a lot more mixed on Havoc and its influence, the introduction of the pirates, whether or not that has been rolled out successfully and iterated on successfully. How are your feelings about Uprising now, 2 years or whatever, a little over 2 years later, and Havoc a little over 1 year later?
So Uprising absolutely is, a renowned success of iterating on faction warfare and turning it into something much better than it was before. Frontline battles is the way to go for it, forcing us to be in concentrated areas and battling is been awesome. There's a lot of tweaks left that I think could be done. Getting rid of like defensive plexing is just We just need plexing, just like I wish that a lot was that was introduced into the pirate insurgency mechanics and Havoc would have actually just came over to faction warfare instead of being a completely separate system.
Let me,
Um,
if I may jump in and just kind of explain that a little bit to people that might not be so familiar with the mechanics. So what I think you're talking about is in normal plexes, there are offensive plexes and defensive plexes that are based on whether or not you are the owner of that system, right? So if you're a
mm,
Galente person and you're in a Caldari system, you are doing offensive plexing in Caldari sites. If you're a Galente person in a Galente system, then you're doing defensive plexing in Galente sites, right?
mm,
However, in a lot of ways, the Havoc sites seem to be a bit of an iteration on the original Plex sites that CCP kind of dreamed to do, but didn't want to mess too much with faction warfare. And one of those differences is that there is no like offensive or defensive. There is, when you go into the site, rather than having either a Galente rat or a Caldari rat or whoever the owner is, instead you actually have both forces on grid. You have
mm.
both the pirates and the counterinsurgency Mordu guys. And so both sides, you just kill the other team, and whichever side is left, then that allows you to run the Plex. So that way they're the identical site. It's much closer to like say how what are they called? Battlefields work.
Yes, yeah.
So so you'd like
And
to see all Plexes move to kind of that
that
feeling?
system more definitely. One, also make sure, like give us a few more rats, kind of like what they have. I like that there's a little bit more smaller in size, more in number. Just gives it a little bit more feeling to it. I think that their rats need to attack players more often, because they do point, and that's another thing that our rats should do in regular faction warfare is point us.
So
That should
so
be easy to kill, but it for the 15-20 seconds it takes you to do that, you should be pointed.
yeah, so when the faction warfare changes happened back in Inferno, like 10 plus years ago, like that change, I remember when they took all the rats out. The reason why they left that one rat was to be a DPS check, but it was incredibly important to all of the pilots at the time to not allow anything PvE to kind of bleed into the PvP experience. They didn't want
Yeah.
like a PvP scenario be altered by the fact that a PvE rat just happened to spawn at that time. But it sounds like we're past that threshold, right? You think that it's
Right. I
fine
think,
for
and
it to.
it worked out great. And maybe I'm a little bit wrong on how often they need to point, because it's working great, at least what we've got in the pirate insurgencies. It's not actually I would take that back. I wouldn't say it's working great. It's something that's not a deterrent, but it's not actually a huge factor on whether you're able to catch a farmer or not. But
I
it
think
does
I think
help
it's a bit.
with catching farmers, I think, to a small degree.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it adds a little bit of spiciness to it, and it
Hmm.
does. To me, being in a faction, like having the NPCs come and save the day, honestly feels like part of it, right? Like
Yeah, that's like,
sometimes
yeah,
you
you're
save
part of the
them, sometimes they
team.
say, yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So, but
Yeah, and one thing real quick too about battlefields that really pisses me off, because you'd said like more like battlefields. Battlefields, they got the rats right, and then they got it to. They were like, you know what? We're not going to change any difference for offense and defense, because at least offensive or defensive plexing, you get a way less reward, right?
right,
But it's super easy. You can do it in an unfit Atron, in any plex,
right,
basically. And that's a stupid mechanic to, personally. I think, a DPS check should always be there. A little bit of danger and spice with a point, should always be there. But battlefields, it's so stupid to have it set towards an offense and defense system of payout, because all you're doing is disincentivizing the one side that's on defense. If there's 5% contested, and why would you do that? You're not going to get any reward for doing it. And their reward for getting it, the damage they're doing is not that bad. Like, it just doesn't matter at that low of a level. Now, battlefields at like 90% contested, those are ones that, one, you get a payout for, and two, it's worth it. You're trying to stem the tide, right?
right.
Um, why would you make these payouts different for offense and defense? Like, and it should be just a simple switch that they should be able to do to make it so that it's plexes whether they're offense or sorry, for battlefields, at the very least, battlefields need to be switched over to being full payout no matter what.
So let's push this one step further then. Would you go so far as to say that like payouts should be the same in any frontline system regardless of who owns the system? Since those are
Right,
the points
yes.
of conflict?
Yep, and that yeah, the idea of offense and defense shouldn't be there for payout, and it shouldn't be there for the difference of changing the plex in any way, shape, or form. It should just matter that you are on defense, so if you lose this system, then they encroach one step further, and if it gets behind the front lines, then you don't get docking access. But I also would like to see more with being able to develop your space or do something. I don't want it to be the more space you own, the more LP you get, like the old system was. But there needs to be a reason to hold a bunch of space.
Right.
And it would be kind of cool if we could maybe develop our space and do something with it, make unique sites that will appear. And yeah, absolutely, the pirates are going to come in and take that shit. But like, you know, it
All in due
something,
time.
right? Um, and so I think that overall, though, um, the expansion for faction warfare was really well done, and it just needs to be iterated on a little bit here and there. And of course we need a faction warfare, or just actually any LP store. The LP store in general in this game needs to be completely reworked, made new player friendly. But moving on to Havoc, though, I liked the idea of Havoc. The implementation has been slow and rough in a lot of areas. The idea that, one, they pulled away a bunch of people who would have come to faction warfare because they enhanced faction warfare so much, and then moved them all into another faction,
Right.
and then turned them into farming factions. Like, because the LP payout was so great, the idea of why would you fight for the Galente when you can fight for the Guristas when their Guristas payout is so great, especially with the Angels and the new Titan that they just got, and the ability to purchase that BPC off of the LP store, along with just getting easy access to all these pirate ships. Why wouldn't you farm? If you're going to be a farmer, why wouldn't you farm for the pirates? And
Right.
it's gotten better. It's because they've tanked the LP store so much, it's gotten better. But there's a lot of rough edges around Havoc that I kind of wish they would have pushed Havoc out and spent more time iterating on the big giant expansion that they did the year before, and enhancing it, and putting a lot of the features that they brought to Havoc, and it could have just been incorporated into faction warfare instead, and not had a third party jump in on this. But I do love the storyline, and I do see the potential, and it's getting a little bit better. They've enhanced it. The farmers have already killed the LP store to a certain degree. And there's the rough edges can be smoothed out if they spend time on it. And that's
Right.
one thing that scares me about CCP, is they're so good at making something that is really cool, that has some rough edges, that if you don't smooth out those edges, it starts to crack and crumble and fall apart. And or it just stays, really rough, and it just is, the massive amount of potential it has gets wasted. And so many times, epic mission arcs, tons of stuff. I'm surprised, and not necessarily, I said they were going to fix faction warfare. I was pushing that on my podcast before they had released the update for it, or said anything about it, and everybody's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, 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 they have touched faction warfare, they'll come back to it. They haven't forgotten about us, I swear. But in general, they do that a lot, where they'll just put it out and then not iterate upon it and not work on it. Wormholes, I feel like, is another area that has
Well,
been, for the most part, just kind of created
let
and
me
then left alone.
let me just jump in there for a second then. Okay, so let's say like I'm a genie and poof, you're now on the CSM, CSM 19. You're now at your first meeting with them, and they're like, okay, we know that people aren't really happy with Havoc, but obviously most of our design development effort right now is on nullsec. So we don't have like huge amounts of like programming or dev effort that we can put into the issue. what do we do about the situation that exists now? Is there anything that you can put out there as like not a
So I don't.
simple fix, but you know what I mean? Like within the constraints of somebody where this is obviously just an iteration, not the major development effort for the expansion.
Right. No, and that's kind of the thing is that's what they need to focus on is they don't need a massive iteration on faction
So what do you
warfare. That's
recommend? What
done.
they come to
But
you.
the little things is just like we were saying, like the changing on faction or battlefields, the changing of plexes over a lot of this stuff. I feel like shouldn't be that hard, especially battlefields. It should be a simple switch of, and there should be a lot of little stuff that they can kind of do in order to really enhance that. Looking at the LP store, time consuming to a certain degree, but shouldn't take a team to do. It should be somebody who should be able to look through the, what is it, 6 faction warfare LP stores and make it new player friendly and make it more reasonable as to what it should be instead of being a system that was developed many years ago, not really looking at what the end result of what you're getting inside the store is. When 90% of the items are crap, why even have them in there?
Right. So when you say new player friendly, what you're focused on the fact that there are it's difficult to look at the LP store and know what is worth investing into.
Not just what's worth investing into, what's not a trap, what's not going to ruin your wallet. Like you can easily walk into the LP store, buy a bunch of shit, and come out and be like, actually, I made negative money per LP.
Well, but in the sandbox game, you could argue that there should be like in order for there to be meaningful decisions, some of those decisions must be a mistake.
I I do agree with that, but not with the item store that's presented to you as like this, not to the point of negative is per LP,
That's fair.
type kind of like there's boundaries of, you could have made a lot better choices in there, and there still should be choices to be made in there. And the market fluctuates. It's always going to fluctuate, and they shouldn't always be iterating, and changing the stats on the LP store. But there should be, every once in a while, like every few years, a relook at it, see what's completely, screwing people, and after one pass, you should be good for quite a long time to at least not go negative on the LP. Um,
That's fair. And there are some items in there that are like at this point truly questionable whether or not you could even justify them even being in the game anymore, let alone
right.
uh yeah. So uh I don't disagree with that. I guess I question like when you say these broad things like make it more newbie friendly or whatever, like what is it? Because we're talking about design, like what does that actually mean? Like
Right. Well, it does come down to a few things too, because one thing is as a CSM person, you're not going to be, and I'm not going to be, or anybody who gets on there isn't going to be able to be a dev. We don't get to
correct.
go in and mess with numbers. We don't even get to go in and understand the complexities of what it means to alter game mechanics to a certain degree. So it's hard to give. I would say that it's better as a CMS person not to be like, I have very specific things that I think need to be done, um, and I'm going to demand CCP do them without an understanding of can even CCP do that, or what are the repercussions that they're going to see and stuff like that. You do need to have it. My idea is much more along the lines of if I'm elected CSM, I'm not going to walk in with a magical genie and a stick and change things. What I'm going to do is try and push a philosophical conversation and ensure that there is a voice being talked about that says there's a bunch of little things you guys can look at and fix and go back to actually iterating upon things, make more, epic story arc missions, make more things that supposedly are supposed to be really, like the epic arc missions. I always come back to because I feel like when they talked about them, they were like, this is super easy for us to make, we're going to pump out a whole bunch of these, it's going to be really awesome. And then they made a handful of them and then never looked at them again. And I
That
feel
that
like,
was also like a decade and a half ago, to be clear.
right. Well, that's
Epic
my point.
arcs.
that it's been a decade and a half and they haven't even been
Right.
picked up since then.
True,
Like
but I'm just saying, like,
it's
they may
even
have to completely redo the authoring tools over again or something at this
that's
point.
at this point, yes, but at the beginning they made it seem like it was super easy for
Fair.
them to do it and that they were going to continue to iterate upon it and build a lot of cool epic arcs. But it all
So
comes back to just I want to make sure that there's a voice and a philosophical or a paradigm that's in the room that is thinking about these things and pushing for those concepts. And ensuring that CCP, at least has somebody at the table that's talking about this.
right, and I think that you've done a good job at demonstrating why there needs to be a faction warfare kind of guy on the CSM. So why don't you look at, like, how can the Galente is only one faction,
Mhm.
and faction warfare is this weird microcosm of, like, counter forces. One of the things that a lot of people who have tried to represent the faction warfare block in the CSM in the past, outside of, like, Torvald, has had problems coming off as neutral, coming off as advocate. If you advocate for things that are good for the Galente, you are by definition advocating for things that are bad for the Caldari.
Mhm.
So, how can people know that you will be a faction warfare candidate for all of the factions of faction warfare, or are you trying to represent the Galente?
I would say there's definitely I'm not going to blow past my bias of being Galente. And I will say that as a Galente, also I've seen that this game is already very biased towards the Keldari. Um, and
It's
Jitta,
so true.
the game is built around like there's a love and passion for CCP and the Keldari, and I'm okay with that to a certain degree. Faction ammo. Let's not even get into it. The There is a whole thing of I am going to definitely have some biases for sure. But my whole thing about this game is that I'm passionate about having fun, getting out there, throwing ships at each other, blowing each other up, shaking the hand, and having a beer with my enemy at the end of the day. This is not a goons versus the Pam Fam kind of rivalry and hatred that is there comparatively at all. I love my Keldari brother, and in fact, the just a little while ago, a few hours ago on my stream, one of my buddies came, that I had met. I actually, what is it? Frippy, who's also running for CSM. I had interviewed him. We had been talking and stuff like that. He's in Karma Fleet, and he came over, and I was like, "Here, I'll teach you faction warfare." He came on, and we were talking about stuff, and he gets to Hades, and he's like, "Oh, I can't join Galente. I can only join the Keldari." So I was like, screw it, join the Caldari, and then I'll have us fight over some plexes, and I'll show you the ropes on some of the ideas of what 1v1 there can be, and some ship fitting ideas and what plexing is and stuff like that. And I'm happy to help the enemy get stronger. A stronger enemy is only better for me in the end. Now there is, of course, completely just if the Keldari were always running 150 strong, and we were running, 10 strong all the time, that would kind of suck. But hopefully, because they're so strong, eventually somebody will come up and be like, okay, let's gather up our own giant forces and fight back. We need to push each other, and I'm not here for the Galente to win. This isn't a winning scenario. And you can't this is a forever war. It's different than any other war that's out there. Now will I say that I need to make sure that I have a perspective that's I want to listen to the Keldari, the Mimitar, the Amar, the Angels, and the Garistas, and hear what their problems are, because they are different than my problems in the Galente. We have some AWOXers sometimes, but it's an
Oh
extremely
God, no! It
minor
is
problem.
nothing.
Is
It is
nothing.
nothing like
No,
with the pirates.
right.
Holy shit! Oh my
And
God,
even just the Keldari have a much worse time
that's
with
true.
AWOXers than us, because we're not a farm centric
Yeah,
system. But the more farmy you get, the more AWOXy you get. Um,
absolutely.
And so, my ideas, behind that might be, some things of like, oh, we can maybe allow people to war deck each other if you're in faction warfare, allow for civil war and stuff like that to kind of be able to
Well,
brew and stuff. But it's a very tough question, and it also is something that I'm not as affected by. So I need to make sure if it is something that is really a big issue, then we need to really make sure that there's a voice about this being talked about. And I'm only going to know about that if I can talk to the Keldari and the Amar and the Angels. Um,
on the subject of representing our pirate brethren, uh, how do you feel about emanation lock?
Emanation Lock, uh,
Emanation lock is the change that was just made to Zarzak, which
where
makes it so that if
you
you
can't
enter into
transfer.
Zarzak, you're locked into that gate for the next 6 hours.
That's what I thought that you meant, and I don't know. I know I've heard that word before, but in any case,
I'm not bitter, you're bitter. Go on, what's your feelings on it?
it's so I get it. I see where CCP's coming with this. It was this ungodly super highway, but it was fucking awesome. I
Yeah,
I,
it
I
is it
used
is
it
superior to
all the
bubbles.
time. It was so
It is superior to bubbles, but yeah, I feel man, 6 hours is such a long time.
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, the highway was cool. Let's if they keep on doing stuff with Zarzak that's different and weird, and it's not just a super highway, and in fact you got rid of the super highway, so make sure it's something still continues to be special. Um, and I really
Well,
think that there's some things about Zarzak that just right now is not making it special enough. Like asset safety from your fob should come back over to, at very least if you win, you know. And I'm even okay with if you lose, it goes back to Zarzak, and you pay the 15% fee. Maybe you pay the 1.5% fee if you win. Um,
yeah.
and
I
there needs to be a reason for the pirates to all want to live out of and do shit out of Zarzak, and that's kind of cool. And if it's that's where the pirate superhighway is, and everybody who's
right.
living out of there gets to raid the fuck out of all corners of the lands. um that's kind of cool. I get that. But I as a Spectre Fleet FC, um I am very sad to see that go because I normally would play around inside of the Galente area, but because when I'm NPIS, I don't want to deal with any of my Galente brothers having to deal with an NPSI fleet flying through. So I always go over to the Mimitar war zone, and the first thing we do is go to Zarzak and like decide where we're going from there, type thing, you know. And now
Well,
that's not an option. But Turner's still a fun place to go to, and
yeah.
you can find lots of places to go from there. So I would like to say that I'm really upset about it, but I'm not really upset about it. I'm like okay, I kind of get it. I guess I'll use Turner moving forward.
So that said, the emanation lock thing has been part of a series of changes that we have seen this year that has caused a lot of people, at least in my particular echo chamber, to be upset at the influence that the CSM have been having this last year in particular. There seems to have been, a lot of these changes have been attributed to the CSM. And, the CSM has a very strong null bias. Would you have advocated for anything different in this last year? Is there anything that stands out for you as something that you would have wish you would have been able to be on the CSM this year to be in that room, as an example?
I would say, I mean, when it comes to Zarzak, I don't know if my voice would have been extremely influential in the what they were kind of bringing out with Zarzak. I would have advocated for sure to like not allow for bubbles and to allow for it to be the intergalactic highway of insanity, and just allow for people to power project just in that small, using that thing. But the more that I learned about it, the more I understand the idea of needing to shut down power projection through Zarzak, especially against 0.0 blocks being able to do that, allowing for bubbles to like, and the idea that if you could bubble somebody so that they were outside of the safe zone, and so they were just going to take damage and die to but I never ran into those problems. Now they locked it
Right.
down completely. um I I don't know if I would have had a lot of voice in regards specifically to Zarzak, but what I would have definitely said is that why are you leaving Zarz, or like, if I would have been more focused on the Havoc aspect of this expansion, or the last expansion if I was in the last CSM, because I think that I would have tried to push for more, at least a little bit. I would have pushed for iteration on faction warfare, not just doing havoc.
Right.
It needed to be a project alongside with a little things for faction warfare that could have gotten updated alongside a havoc, and they didn't really do that. I felt, when it came to the 0.0 thing, I would have been a voice that would have cautioned them to ensure that they make 0.0 happy with this. If they're going to do a massive iteration on 0.0, the worst thing they could possibly do is make it worse than it currently is, for everyday people. I can see the idea. I would love the idea of them, nerfing power projection and Ansible bridges. That would be, I think that would have been cool. But then they walked that back quite strongly.
Yeah.
And then they it, I would have advocated for making better mining sites. Like the site, you should have made the players really happy with the mining sites, really happy with the new ratting sites. Make them, that you could still upgrade a bunch of your space, but you nerf and make it so that Ansible bridges are really expensive. It's You got to be really strategic with the way that you put them out there. And really push for, make sure that you don't come out with this and just piss off a huge power of a very powerful group of player base that you are messing with here. Because it sounds, just from my personal like viewing of this, is that the response to this expansion has been really bad. And
Yeah.
then the killing of the Skyhook rating, which I don't know how it it was definitely on the attacker side was too much. I would like to know more data on like how much were these actually making? Was it worth it to actually put up one of these? Is it
The
is the
numbers
sky
I saw from Raiders were pretty impressive.
the
Like the
rating
number,
was really impressive, but that means if you get one cycle off, isn't that
right.
meaning that you got a couple billion ISK worth of materials
Yeah,
for
no,
putting up a
that's what I'm saying. Like,
700 million ISK structure? Like,
yeah, their passive income feels pretty good at this point for sure, especially since now it can't be like half of it's
yeah, it's
und
doubled or whatever, 50%
it's
more, and it can't be rated anymore, basically, unless you're a really, basically big block, because you're going to protect your shit if it's got billions upon billions of ISK inside of there, and you can, Sino drop on everything within range, right?
right. Yeah.
I mean, so you only
So
have to worry an hour. So well, maybe longer than that in your area to a certain degree as things kind of break up a little bit. But I'm really upset about the I would, and apparently CSM is not the one being attributed with this change, at least so far that I've been seeing and hearing out there, is that a lot of the CSM are kind of coming out and being like, whoa, 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 we didn't say this. Like, we said we were getting our asses handed to us on the defensive side. We didn't say that we needed to be completely coddled.
that's fair. I've seen a couple of people from the CSM being pretty strong advocates of it, but maybe it is more mixed than I thought. I don't know. Maybe I've got my own bias going on here. But so um let's shift gears a little bit, which is so you keep on talking about being newbie focused, and you're talking about I think that faction warfare is a really important place, especially for newer players. Um, what the CCP did a pretty big changeover of the new player experience a couple years back. It has this cool little story now. Um, and then it has a mining component, and then it kind of just ends in a weird way. But it seems to be like there is some better tools to get people educated in the game now.
Mhm.
What more do you think that what do you think that CCP should prioritize when it comes to helping new bros?
So my big thing would be to add in once again to go back to the small things. Teaching D-scan would be very important. To the importance of D-scan and how there is nothing that really tells you anything about D-scan inside the tutorial is a shame because it's
Inside the
such a
game.
inside the game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Not just the tutorial. Like at no point,
Right?
if you
Yeah.
don't
No,
already know what D-scan is, at no point, like maybe if you might hover over and be like, what the heck is a directional scanner? Like every
yeah.
single conversation about learning about the D-scan, it's like, oh, what do I need to do to get into low sec? Oh, you should before you go to low sec, you should learn how to D-scan. What is D-scan? Like that is every conversation starts with what is D-scan?
Yep. No, exactly. So those are some like low-hanging fruit. I think that it would be really awesome to have a faction warfare tutorial. Teach them how to find a plex, how to find it inside of the probe scanner, how to warp in at 100 kilometers, do a 0.1 AU directional scan 360. Is there anything inside? No. All right. You probably safe to go inside. Is there something inside? Oh, it should be a pop-up that'd be like, oh, just let you know, there's no way using directional scan to understand whether this is an ally or an enemy. If you go in here, it's possible you're going to run into PvP, or you might find a friend. Um,
Yeah.
type kind of thing. Something that directs them to, okay, now that you've completed a Plex, you've got some LP. Let's show you how to go buy a blueprint from the LP store for faction warfare. I'll direct you to the nearest station to go do that. Have them buy that. Next mission, let's build a comet because now you have a comet blueprint. So let's gather up the minerals and teach you how to do some basic things. It doesn't need to be super handholdy as much as I'm making it out to explain, but it would be nice if there was a breakdown of how do you do faction warfare, how do you make money from faction warfare, and how do you get involved. Another aspect that I would love to see is I don't know if it's necessarily something that you would consider new player experience, but I would say that there should be like an in-game spotlight on NPSI and other community groups that are running events and stuff that are open to any player to come join. And that there should be a level of vetting system for sure, but it should be something that should be fairly easy to get yourself into this spotlight if you're a community that runs new player experience, open to new players to come and do something, whether it's roaming in 0.0, running a home front site, joining faction warfare or something like that. Faction warfare becomes a little bit less NPSI, of course, because of you have blues and reds. Um, but there should be a much stronger spotlight in the game, in the game menu that pops up, like like just like the agency that you can go access and be like, what community events are going on today?
Yeah. One of the things, so you could theoretically, I know Mike Azariah, who's also running for CSM, he's really involved in like the new player, the rookie chat. And he has made a bunch of channels for things like Magic 14 skill plans, useful ships fits for people of different kinds. Not just him, but other people have too. But
Why
there's all
isn't the
these different
Magic
channels.
why isn't the Magic 14 automatically a skill plan in this game? I don't understand.
I
Anyway, sorry. It really irks me that that's just a very simple thing that they could have done.
I think, well, to push back on that, I think that it is potentially a bit of a trap because, like, I know a lot of people that prioritize training the Magic 14 over the skills that are like immediately for them. Like,
Okay.
oh yeah, I didn't train medium guns because I wasn't done training, fucking navigation 5 or whatever. There are circumstances like that, but I still agree that like of the skill plans, they could definitely have it there. Although I also think that it does show off the fact that the skill plan system is kind of has the weakness of I don't think the entire Magic 14 can fit in it. But either way, I digress.
There is
My
something like
point
that, yeah.
is my point is it might be interesting to like make a channel of channels for things like MPSI fleet channels, homefront
Oh,
operations, all those kinds of things, because people are spamming now. Whenever any new bro mentions anything, they know to link those links, and that kind of enters into the zeitgeist. So be the
yeah.
change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because sometimes, yeah, I mean, demanding some things out of CCP, it's much better to try it, do it yourself, and then continue to be like, you could do this better than me if you if you could just if you could
And
just
and
spend
to
some
that
time here.
to that end, I do want to shift a little bit away from like your CSM position to kind of who you are a little bit, which is that you do have your own show called Federation Frontline, where you educate people on what's going on in faction warfare and what's going on in EVE Online. Obviously, something that is near and dear to my heart. Uh, what is the thing that you've gotten the most out of doing that? Is there any lessons that you've learned or insight that you've gained about Eve that you wouldn't have had without doing the show?
So I think that one of the big things that came out of this is the friendships that I've created via the show. I do a lot of like updates on the war zone or talking about what's going on currently in faction warfare. But a large chunk of my show is actually dedicated to interviewing the Eve players. I try to focus a lot on grabbing up as many of the new players or older players or any kind of player that plays faction warfare. But I definitely reach outside of that, and anybody is always welcome to come on to my show. And just hearing how diverse the stories are out there is crazy, because the first thing that I do with my show is always like, tell me, how'd you get into Eve Online, and why'd you start playing? Um, and then I have them take me down that story from, okay, now that we started at the beginning, what happened after that, and get into conversations about different things that that they've partake in, or things that they've witnessed, or opinions that they have regarding situations that they've been in Eve, and just hearing all these crazy awesome stories, and then making really good friendships with a lot of the people that I've interviewed. It just has really pulled me into this community a lot more than a lot more broad kind of pulling in me into this community than just being friends with people on my corporation or alliance, or even when I was part of big giant super organizations and stuff like that. I'd go around and do a lot of partying, and hang out with a lot of people, but interviewing, I don't know, there's a certain level of connection that you get with people by doing an interview with somebody.
I don't know anything about that. So, no, but like that's a very interesting point, because the thing that always strikes me is how diverse Eve player base really is. We've been pretty low key recently, so like, but the things that people do to just entertain themselves in the game, if you just listen to Eve media, you think that Eve Online is these particular things, and if you're not doing those particular things, then you're not really playing or whatever, right? Like everybody's doing, nobody would possibly do it this way or whatever, but like there are people doing all kinds of silly things. They've got their own little thing in their head. They don't care if it's optimal.
Mhm.
That's not the point. They're just having their little fun
That
little game that's totally separate from everybody else, you
Yep,
know?
that's my buddy Coder Fasteel. We talk about how we live up in the big in the small city of Hediles. We just hanging out, and everything's great. We build our own stuff. We do our own thing, and why would you even go to the big city of Dodixie or Jeddah to buy something when you can build it for yourself at home? We got that at home. You can build it yourself. It'll be fine. You're just gonna have to spend 10 hours gathering the minerals and gathering all the stuff together.
Yeah.
And he goes out and he's like, all I want to do is go, hacking and build up my own stuff. I want to build my own T3. If I'm gonna fly a T3, I'm gonna build it from the ground up, type kind of thing. And doesn't really like going to any of the trade hubs and buying anything. He plays the game completely different than the way that I see it. Is very suboptimal, but he has an insane amount of fun doing it.
Yeah. It's a universe, man. We all live in it. So, but I think that that's so important though, because like a lot of, if you think about it, the CSM as an election is at least on some level a popularity contest. It's the people who have like big bases to vote for them. So, but it would skew towards more mainstream social groups, right? Like,
Mhm.
so you would expect that a CSM representative could kind of like focus on the mean, as it were. So somebody who does a bunch of random interviews, and especially with newer people, will probably maintain a better insight as to how things quote unquote really are, as opposed to the people that insulate themselves with thousands of people that will confirm whatever assumption that they happen to have about what's going on, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And one of the things is that I'm confronted with realities that I didn't understand multiple times when I'm interviewing people, and in there, it is much easier for them to voice their opinion to me in an interview than it is for the masses to, an individual inside of the masses to voice their opinion at all. Like, and for the leader or anybody that's trying to represent this mass to understand what the masses are actually trying to tell you. Like you said, it's a lot of yes man mentality and just echo chamber confirmation of your belief structure. I really love having all different types of people, especially like interviewing the Keldari is some of the best interviews that I've had for sure.
Do you have any good examples of like of your positions that you currently hold? Do you have any examples of this kind of stuff shaping these positions? Like, do you have one of
Um,
these positions because somebody enlightened you towards it, or
AWOXing. I knew about AWOXing to a certain degree through the Mimitar when they would come over and they'd AWOX us a little bit when we used to be allied with them, but I never thought it was a real problem at all. We never really had to deal with any of this in the Galente. But when I started interviewing people over at the Caldari and I had Vuk come onto my show and he just loudly and proudly declared himself to be an AWOXer, and just how prolific it is in the Keldari really kind of opened up my eyes to that this is a really big problem and it could become a big problem in the Galente. And if it if we don't look at this, if CCP doesn't look into this, it's just going to ruin the whole concept of what you're trying to build with a group that you can join in Eve Online, a faction, and be part of that faction and trust and work with your faction to a certain level. Now you
but
also have to be very careful about like the people are like just come in and start banning people and kick them out just because you know that they're an AWOXer and stuff. Or just especially people are like, oh, you shot somebody 3 times, now you can never join the Keldari again. It's like, okay, that's not the solution, guys. There needs to be I think that it needs to be a solution that comes from the players, which is why I think that the only really good way to move forward is like allow players to war deck each other, um, and
isn't that possible?
not unless if I'm a faction, you cannot war deck my corporation right now, my alliance, 100% you can't
Oh yeah, that's fair.
because I don't have a structure up.
Right? Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so it right now, but I should be war deckable just for being. I'm already in a war deck, so why can't I just? It doesn't need to be
yeah.
it doesn't need to be the same objective based system. Just bring it back to the old stupid system of if you're in faction warfare, you spend like $200, 200 million ISK, you get 2 weeks of war, whatever whatever the mechanic kind of is, and then you can just continue to pay it, and it just is you can make it a forever war too, and then nobody has to pay anything either. Um, Allow for civil war, allow for because the biggest problem with AWOXing, I think, is the idea of um, it's horrible for a new player experience. Of I didn't even I'm not even seeing the person on my overview, and all of a sudden they're there, they're shooting me, blowing me up, and I didn't even get to
Right.
react. And I might be flying something shiny, and you shouldn't be. But let's say even if that an E&I might feel shiny to you, and just getting a buddy of yours coming in and blowing you up, and you're not even able to see what's going on is ridiculous. um, and it's not.
There's
It's
nothing wrong with flying shiny stuff in faction warfare. To be
that's
clear,
okay. Yeah,
we need
I'll
people to fly
backpedal
shiny
there.
stuff too.
No,
Better
absolutely.
kill mails.
Um,
Better
but
drops.
yes, absolutely. But
Bring
I
your A
think that
types.
there's, you have to be really careful about this whole thing too, because it's not super simple either. This game has AWACSing, it's allowed in the game.
Right.
There is a penalty for it in the game currently, for the faction warfare system, as they lose some of their standing with, and if they lose enough, they can get kicked out.
Yeah.
But it's really easy to just hide, and that's why I think that it's fine, because you could say, well, you can't war deck somebody that's inside of the newbie or the NPC faction warfare group, and it's like, yeah, but they'll get kicked out by themselves eventually just for AWACSing. It's really easy to get kicked out for doing that in the NPC corporation.
Right.
But when you join up with a corporation, you shouldn't be able to harbor yourself in a corporation. I should just be able to be like, oh, there's an AWACSer in your corp, either you get rid of them or I war deck you, or if that's their corporation, I'm just gonna war deck them. Like,
So, but
I
you said
now
that
they're flashy.
the problem though with this is that like to a certain extent this is the victim of success, right? Like you said, like the more popular the thing, the more it incentivizes this kind of behavior, and it becomes really difficult to legislate it. Which is why I believe that you were suggesting like a player-based solution out of this might be good. Although honestly, I was just thinking like maybe some sort of long-term flag, so like for 24 hours or 40 hours, you have the stain of an AWOXer on you and people can see it and your own militiamen can attack you or something like that. But I think that you're right that like this is a very tricky problem. So let's go to a more straightforward problem, and I just want to throw an idea at you and see what you think about it. Because with Havoc, one of the things that I have said is that the reward structure doesn't actually reward counterinsurgency to function as like a reason to do it in particular.
Mhm.
So, do you think that having Havoc use the same LP store as just normal faction warfare has successfully incentivized faction warfare pilots to participate in Havoc? Or do you agree with me, or do you think that having a different LP store for counterinsurgency operations is necessary?
Different LP store is necessary for sure, especially when you're comparing the two LP stores. Either you even out all six of the LP stores, which that I'm kind of okay with that to a certain degree too. Um, I don't know how you do that exactly with the way that pirate ships are, but there, at this point in time, it's obvious that it's way better to be part of the pirates to run and farm than it is to be a part of any militia. And we already get our LP store, our LP pretty decent from our plexes. And there's no reason for. In fact, a lot of us were like, let it fall to 5 in Haiti. It'd be kind of cool to have some bubbles around here. We're,
Right.
we're we're
Yeah.
incentivized in a lot of ways to allow for this to happen, to continue doing our regular plexing. In fact, why pull our troops off the front lines of the Caldari and deal with the pirates when we're not actually getting that much better pay?
And I
Um,
think that this is fundamentally the biggest problem with Havoc. Like we don't talk about it enough, but like you just said, like why would you do it? Why every plex that you run against the Guristas is a plex that you're not doing to hold the system.
right. And I mean, there are sometimes like the fall losing Hade kind of sucked. Um, and the thing about it though is that it's it's harder to do and play inside of the insurgency, and to go, there's definitely no incentive for me to go hunt down an insurgency at
Right.
all. If it's on my doorstep, maybe I have a little bit of reason to go do it, but it's not that big. And my incentive is uh, much more involved in trying to find fights out of it, and that's fun. We get some really good fights, we get bubbles and stuff like that. The PvE aspect is worthless comparatively. There's not it's I don't want to say worthless, I would say it's this is not that good. it's not impressive in any way, shape, or form over actually running a Keldari Plex. It's more dangerous than running a Keldari or a regular faction warfare Plex. Um, and maybe if there's nothing else left to do, you go do that too, and kind of you plex down systems, you just plex down the system, right? But yeah, the incentive is just not there at all. And if there was a completely different store that was much more on par to the pirate, and I think that's one of the reward risk to reward ratio is just not there at all. And if we had a better LP store that was equal to a Pirates LP store, like a Mordu's LP store or something, that'd be really cool. And it would also feel different. I don't know.
Right.
It just
More.
doesn't.
I'll give you a hint. Mortis Legion BPCs
Right,
and
exactly.
net
If I could get
resonators.
that shit and
Mortis Legion net resonators. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, I mean, like, that's a whole thing. But okay, so to kind of, we're getting to the end of the hour. I don't have to end at any given time, but I do want to
an hour is always
respect
a
your time
pretty
as well.
good time. Yeah.
Yeah. But shoot, I was just about to ask you something. Oh yeah. So obviously you have a very successful podcast. You have your grouping game. Um, what do you hope to achieve as a member of the CSM that you cannot already achieve as a content creator?
I would say that I want to have more of a direct line to CCP. Now, I am working towards, and probably someday will probably make partner. And I probably could make partner right now if I could figure a way to show my stats better for my podcast and stuff like that. But I do want to be not just but I even if I was a partner, and in fact I would much prefer to be on the CSM rather than a partner because I want to be at that table, not just have a line of communication to CCP, but be in the room during the discussion type kind of thing. I want to make sure that there's a presence on CSM that one is not a bitter vet, is not somebody that is just looking out for numero uno and is trying to enhance my alliance and stuff like that. I want to see the betterment of Eve, and I want to make sure that that's what's on everybody's mind when they're actually talking at this table, and to consistently bring up the ideas of iterating upon things that have been left to the wayside, or things that are looking like they will be left to the wayside. For example, faction warfare or havoc faction warfare, pirate faction warfare feels like it's going to be left to the wayside unless there's somebody there poking them, going, "Hey, you need to continue looking at this. There's some small things that need to be fixed here, and you can do a lot of work by just making some small changes."
Right. All right. Well, so like the CSM last year, I think it was, the CCP started a thing where a certain number of the CSM are elected, and then CCP themselves pick one or two other people. In the event that you do not get elected, should CCP pick you as one of the two wild cards, and if so, why?
Wow, that's a pretty good one. Of course I'm going to say that yes, they should definitely pick me. And I think that I bring a unique kind of aspect to the way that I've been all throughout Eve. I've done a lot of grunt work, but I've also interacted a lot with leadership. I've tried building my own corporations, up inside of faction warfare, and had a lot of really great success with that, and had a lot of fun with it, building something from the ground up type kind of thing without getting involved in major super factions and stuff like that. Um, and I have just an unbelievable amount of passion for this game, and I want to see it better. And I want to see it improve, and I want to see it last forever. And I really want to bring that energy to the CSM.
How long have you been doing Federation Frontline?
So Federation Frontline, now we are on our fourth year now. So we've 3 years completed. and we're on to our 4th year of running.
Okay, well, I guess as we for my closing thoughts, obviously, Frozen Fallout, I feel is a pretty chill dude. As I've said before, you and I have known each other for a while, um, but not only do I think that he deserves consideration for your vote because he has been dialed in with the community for quite some time, and as you can see, is fairly articulate with the way that he can communicate his stuff, and is well connected to the communities that he would represent. I will actually take this and as an aside and just say on a personal note, go check out his podcast. You're not a partner? That is unacceptable. I need everyone. Do me a favor. Go check out Federation Frontline Report. There'll be links down below. He's a very clever, like creative dude. He's got a really fun video that he's got on his CSM thing, which we will play at the end of the stream. Consider voting for him, but absolutely go check out his show and follow him and give him support because he deserves it for absolute sure. Thank you so much for coming. What is your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are just that I'm super excited about this. This is super cool. I'm going to Vegas. I'm going to be at FanFest. I'm also, I throw my own in real life Madtown meetup here for Eve Online in Madison, Wisconsin, and I just am just really excited to go out and just hang out with a whole bunch of Eve nerds while running for CSM. This is going to be one of the highlights of my life, just like it was going to FanFest.
What
Um,
so with eVegas right around the corner and with the expansion and all that stuff about to be announced, what is your dark horse like hope for what is going to be announced for the expansion?
I guess my really big hope, kind of going right back to, is that this is going to be a Little Things expansion. That it's going to be about doing a. I don't.
Eve
I,
Online iteration.
well, so I wanted to see some like the story aspect to be the lore and stuff like that to continue with the Zarzak and to continue, enhancement of pirate faction warfare type kind of stuff. And I actually I take it back. I wouldn't say just Little Things. A low sec expansion, not a faction warfare expansion, a low sec expansion. Like one big giant enhancement to make low sec the treasure trove it should be. Like,
I
because high sec is safe because the empires make it safe. Low 0.0 is safe because the players make it their player empires make it safe. Low sec is just never fucking safe. Let's make
I
it the
got you.
treasure trove.
I got you. I'll take that and I'll take it one more step forward. What about low sec and NPC null sec? Eve
Oh
Online,
yes,
like
yes,
lawless
yes. The
outlaw, CCP
lawless.
outlaw.
Yes, I like it. Yes.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I will definitely be checking out your show again soon. Like I said, I like you do good work for sure. Um, and I
There's
do
a
enjoy. Oh,
lot of stuff out there, so and I know that you have just the massive amount of work that you do in even the lore training and just the amount of content that you throw out there. Hell man, it's hard for me to watch any other show besides my own show and get my own stuff going. I can't imagine how little time you have to watch other people's content.
well, yeah, but it's more about like I don't know, man. With so much like angst recently, I've been trying to like focus more on patch notes and what CCP says as opposed to like what not it isn't even your show though. Like oh boy, this is going to get me in trouble. But like I'm starting to get tired of a lot of Eve content creators that don't play Eve.
Oh yeah.
I'll just say that. And it's kind of
Hmm.
burning me out altogether. That's why I feel bad because like of all of the shows that I do check out, it would be like you'd be on my short list. So now I feel bad. I need to go do it again. But yeah, no.
Yeah, no,
That's why I
I
said like
definitely
people
get
have to
that.
check out
Like,
your stuff.
yeah, be actually playing the game is really important. I think
Yeah.
to really ground your, because or else it becomes a flight of fancy, to a certain extent, and it becomes looking back on things with 2020 vision, and then armchair admiraling the whole discussion. That's
Yeah.
I mean,
But
but there is some. I will say that there are some people out there that are really impressive, even though they don't play Eve. Um,
that's true. Yeah. I don't want to, I'm not hating on them all. I'm just saying, like, there's a certain amount of, I have kind of pulled back a little bit in just watching everybody's content. But yeah, as soon as I saw that you were running for CSM, I was like, oh, that's like the next step for him. I'm really proud. So you've come a long way,
Thank
man.
you. Absolutely, man. It's been a hell of a journey.
And dude's a good FC. I every time I see your pings go out, I'm like, I'm gonna crash on one of his fleets one of these days.
Absolutely,
So
you're
go
welcome
check out his stuff.
anytime, man.
All right. Well, I think that should about wrap it up for us. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and put it in the comments below, and I'll direct it to him. He can respond to stuff there. There's links in the description to his campaign, videos, and everything else he gives me, so you can go check that out. Yeah, I hope this is not the last time that we see you on the stream, and I hope that you do a great job on your campaign. Do you have any major events coming up that you should point people towards?
So currently, just going to Eve Vegas and then Fan Fest are really big ones. We haven't picked out a date. It will be after May, sometime maybe in June or July or August of next year, that we will be doing the Madtown meetup in Madison, Wisconsin again. Um, Other than that, we are, just streaming every Wednesday night. We have a fleet of people that come out every Wednesday. Check it out with us. We always have a lot of fun. We just blew up a bunch of sedition battleships last Wednesday. Was just a huge amount of fun.
Is
Um,
sedition joining the Caldari the best thing to ever happen to the militia, or what?
I mean, I I'm not gonna shit talk sedition, but it is fun fighting sedition, that's for sure. And it was fun fighting alongside with sedition and Young Puke. And but I'm perfect. Like I said, I love my enemies just as much as I love my allies in faction warfare and in Eve Online, because having good enemies is just a way to make a good home.
You might be more diplomatic than me, but I guess that's my Angel Cartel showing. I think that should about wrap it up. Thank you so much for spending time here. Come back again soon. And to everyone else, thank you for checking it out. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Again, down below, let us know any questions, comments, or whatever for Frozen Fallout. And of course, go check out his CSM campaign post and his YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff. But until next time, I've been Ash Rothy. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012. When did you start playing?
I technically started playing in 2003, looked at the game for a little bit, tried it a few other times, but I would say my real start date is probably 2006 with Frozen Fallout. But I have had little adventures here and there through from beta to 2006.
Got got some old teeth here. All right.
Yeah, I am an
Long tooth.
antediluvian. This is
There you
true.
go. But once again, on behalf of Frozen Fallout and myself, Ash Rothy, the voice of New Eden, thank you all for coming. And until next time, we'll see you in space. 07.